Okay, quick vid. I literally just had a thought. It was a couple of weeks ago, but it came back in my head recently. And for the people of a certain age, do you remember you would get assigned in school a book report? You'd get a book report on some subject, some person, some event in history, whatever it was. But you would get a book report. And how you did your book report was you went to a library and you had a library card and you went to a really big wall unit of shelves that had little drawers. And that cabinet had like 100 little drawers. And you would open the drawers in alphabetical order. And so if you were doing a book report on Ben Franklin, you would go into the B one and you would find books on Ben Franklin. And you would, on the card, it would say like row and number of shelf. So you'd have to walk into like a certain section of the library. So it was like a scavenger hunt, right? You had to go on like a mystery hunt. You had to find like the history part of the library, and then you had to find the row within that section, and then you had to find the shelves within the section on the history at the certain place in the library. And then you had to look at the books, they were numbered, and then you had to find the books. And you had to take the books off the shelf, and then you'd have to go up to the librarian and you would check out said books. So 2, 3, 4 books, whatever. You would check them out and you would go home and read the books. Stay with me. Read the books and then write a book report on Ben Franklin. And this would take you maybe a week. I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And then you'd have to return the books to the library on time, okay? Or else they'd charge you a fee. And that's how you did any kind of book report or research, anything that you wanted to figure out. Like right now, if you're like, oh, I wonder how many people live in Switzerland. Okay, you'd go to the library, you would find a book on Switzerland, and you would read the book or look at the table of contents, and you would find out population of Sweden or Switzerland. Like, everyone has everything at their fingertips. Everyone. And there's no waiting or wanting for anything. The other thing that blows my mind is like the waiting and the wanting, right? So like now when you look at people online, like social media and whatever, everyone's like rich and beautiful, right? Which we know is not truly representative of average society, but it's still what is posted and blogged about. So these kids that have these phones at whatever age adults decide to let them have these phones and access to the World Wide Web and fucking Google and YouTube and TikTok and whatever is popular at the moment. These kids look at kids that are posting and they're loaded. They're rich. They drive great cars. They have jewelry. They're, wealthy at 16, 17 because they're blogging and they have all these social media accounts. And these kids think that this is normal, that they have no concept of money, none whatsoever. Like right now in 2025, $5 back when I was 15, 16, 17 is now $20. So like you can't go anywhere now without spending $20. Like when we used to go see a movie, you would sneak snacks in either your mom's pocketbook or your pockets, and a ticket would be a couple bucks, and then maybe you got a box of candy. I don't know, whatever, or a thing of popcorn. But the point of my story is now these kids think that money grows on trees, and they think, you know, $100,000 salary today in 2025 used to be 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That was like, holy shit, you're making $100,000 a year. Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow. Now it's like you're making $100,000 and it's like, yeah, you know, like that's not even that good anymore. Everyone's making millions in their mind, right? In their mind. So you have these kids that have this false sense of what reality is and what things cost, and they think that you just achieve this like overnight, right? Like your first job that you get is 100 grand or whatever they think. But like, you know, it takes, used to, there wasn't instant wealth back in the day. Like you worked 20 years to get to a place where you were making really good money. You started at nothing, bottom of the ladder, bottom of the barrel, you kind of worked your way up. And it took you several years to do that, or decades, right? You know, now it's like they have this false sense of, you know, because whatever society they live in, like if they live in a family that is financially secure, not that they don't have any debt, not that the parents, you know, don't have bills, but if you're making it, these kids think that money just happens. It just happens that you have this money. Not that it took you 20 years to get to this point, and that you went through stages to get to that point, right? It's just, that's what you make. And it just blows my mind that kids have this false sense of money. You know, like they're all carrying around iPhones. I mean, an iPhone is $1,000, right? They all have the AirPods. Those are a couple hundred. They're all wearing, you know, nice Nike shoes or like On Clouds. I mean, those are like $150. So, you know, they have no sense of what things cost and what it takes to make the money to buy the item that now costs this amount of money. So I think besides the family teaching kids the value of $1, I think teaching kids in school, like balancing an account, kind of what bills are, actual starting salaries of, you know, jobs when they get out of college, it probably would be a good thing, because these kids think everyone just has this magic account that like never depletes in money. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on your kids and what they think money is about at like 16 and older, because it's just crazy. And rent, like when these kids graduate college, are they going to be able to get an apartment in a decent, safe town, without 30 roommates? Like, is everyone just moving back in with their parents because there's no way that rent is affordable for families right now, let alone kids that come out of school with some amount of debt, starting their jobs that are starting at whatever they start at, you know, for many different fields. But let's say you start a job, your first entry-level job in your field that you studied 4 years of college for. Let's say you're making 40 grand. Just saying, rent's $2,000 a month easy, and you have student loans on top of that. Forget a car, forget cell phone bills, forget utilities, forget gas and food, forget going out money. How are these kids, how is this generation going to afford that with no real knowledge of where money comes from, how much it takes to pay bills and get an apartment? Some states are first last security. So if your rent is $2,000, you just magically have $6,000 to hand over to someone to start renting. And even with a roommate, if you split everything 50-50, that's still $3,000 you have to come up with. So unless you're teaching your kids the value of a dollar from day one, like chores, you get money, you have a kind of a spreadsheet, you're telling them how much to save, they're hardworking kids, they're going to be a massive fucking rude awakening where you're paying for not teaching your kids that shit because they're going to come back out of school, start living with you, not know how to manage money, and they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans on top of not being able to afford rent. Crazy, crazy, crazy.